Good morning. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Venkatesh. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'll just take a moment to introduce what we are trying to do and to introduce you as well. Um,
Right.
so we are starting off today on Ganesh Chaturthi with this channel called Balance is the Essence, where Dr. Srinivasan, who is my father, who for the purposes of this call, I'm going to say or call Doc, is going to share his perspectives on wellness. The reason the channel has been called Balance is the Essence is because, as we will talk about, doctors' work across the last many years has been about wellness is all about balance. And I think I'll just make an intro to Doctor before we start. But I think across the 80 years of his life, the 50 that I've known him, of course, he's been one of the best examples of balance. After his medical education in India and the US, he's worked as an executive at a CXO level for more than 2 decades. Alongside being a near professional level musician, for the last 50 years, he hasn't skipped a day of his practice at music. He's also been a fitness enthusiast. He has never again skipped more than a day, other than when there are illnesses of working out, swimming and diving in the old days as well. He has written, he has worked on spiritual topics as well. And of course, always in the midst of all of this, found time for weekend jaunts into nature. So I think Doc has been the best example possible of how to lead a life of balance. And I think that's why this channel and the idea is to share perspectives. I thought I'll just start with that intro, Dad, Doc, and hand over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you. Special thanks for the very generous introduction.
All true, all factual.
Good. Thank you. So I think, you have also played a big role in the way I am living today. So as we always say, when you have balance, the balance should be 360 degrees. People forget that the balance cannot be one-sided. It should be 360 degrees. And to that extent, Venkatesh's contribution to the 360 degrees has been very significant. And I'm sure we'll continue with this. And do put in your comments as you deem fit, because it's a dialogue kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
And your comments are always valuable, because we have a generation, we'll get a double generation input. Okay.
Yes.
So continue with that. Okay. Now, Venkatesh has already done the intro part. So we'll move on with the actual meat of the presentation. So next slide, please. Now here you see a circus elephant. I say circus elephant because the elephants in the wild don't live like this. They don't look like this.
Yeah.
They are doing all this to please their human masters.
Right.
So, and you see here a huge elephant standing on one leg, and that too on a bit of a rounded object, something. And obviously, the elephant cannot continue to live like this for the rest of his life. So this is going to be short-lived, but that is the way it is. Any kind of enforced balance will not last. And if it has to last, it has to be sustainable.
Right.
So balance and sustainability go together. And life is a series of balances, small little acts, going to school, going to college, going to your girlfriend's home or whatever. Life is a series of such things. And at each level, you have to balance. Yeah. So this elephant is doing it at its own level. So I think it's a good one, but the elephant must be hating us for doing this. So
that's a very important point, that this is not sustainable. It's a temporary act of balance, but that isn't really sustainable. Perfect.
Okay. Very true. Yeah, next slide, please. Now here you see a sort of a diagram, or whatever it is worth, which has the elements that we normally deal with. In HR departments, each component is taunted about, etc., etc. And so same with, executive life, same with married life, same with retired life. At every stage, you have to manage your work, family, friends, and self, and work-life balance comes from there. So there are many people who will contest the word work-life, but let's not get into the academics or polemics of that. But you have to balance. And if you don't balance each and every element of your work, then you are not balancing. So this is where the continuing, sustained balancing act comes in, and it has to continue. We cannot say I balanced myself yesterday, today I will go imbalanced or something. That is nonsense. But many people do that, They set aside 5-10 minutes for the balance, and the rest of the life is totally imbalanced. You hold one whiskey in one hand, and then you say that you are very well balanced. Okay, it's up to individuals. We all have to work out their own methodologies and modalities of balancing, and that's what this slide shows. Next slide. Going way, way, way back in history and in theology and in theosophy, God is said to have ordered a Sabbath, and the Sabbath is meant to rest. And out of the 7 days in the week, the Sabbath is for one day, Saturday, but then it moved on to Sunday and then it disappeared also, But we don't honor the Sabbath. But if we do, a lot more problems and issues can be solved. And today we will not look at that aspect of rest and Sabbath, but we'll look at what in contemporary terms and times, you can achieve a balance, and you should continue to achieve that balance. So Sabbath is a divine ordainment, ordinance, if you like, which says, Johnny, today is Sabbath day, recharge yourself. Bring your batteries, charge them, and get ready for a meaningful life for the rest of the 6 days in your life. Next slide, please. You have any comments, Anku?
No, not thus far.
Yeah, okay. Now, work-life balance has been a topic for many, many, many labor unions, and continues to be a topic for labor unions and managements, and even at home. Today, especially with working from home, you don't know where your work starts, ends, or home starts and ends. Yeah. So it's one big mass. But that is important to know that we have at least components which we have to honor. And this is a slide that shows in Australia, the labor union people, before the labor unions really became active, the labor unions demanded or suggested that you have 3 compartments of your life.
Right.
Out of the 24 hours you have one first 8 hours for labor to keep the labor unions and managements happy, and then 8 hours recreation to keep the rest of the persons in your life happy, and then the last 8 hours you just rest, do nothing. And that is when the portion of Sabbath comes in. You observe a Sabbath every 8 hours every day, then you'll be fine. A lot of people have problems about various institutions and all will not happen if you honored that. Right. Next slide, please.
One thought here, very interesting, because I thought I'll ask you a question. I think for a lot of people, rest is something that they recognize as a necessity, right? But
Right.
these 8 hours of recreation are very interesting, and I think it speaks to the fact that we need more than just rest. We need recreation, and we need to recharge our batteries, as you often say. Maybe you want to just elaborate for a minute. I know in other sessions we'll talk about it.
Yeah. See, good point. And actually, each of these points deserves a workshop. What do you mean by recreation? What do you mean by rest? And what do you mean by labor? Right. And the HR guys will know, or IR guys will know where labor starts and ends. And the rest will also know from the time we hit the sack till we, wake up, either snoring or not snoring. And the recreation part is the one that is demanding more attention, and it should not be passive. I would suggest to Venkatesh that maybe recreation can be dealt with more microscopically than people do. Because the people say, okay, yeah, let's go and have a drink.
Correct.
And over drink, you have to eat samosas or you have to eat kebabs. And then as you do, you engage in conversation. As you engage in conversation, you abuse somebody behind his back, blah, blah, blah. So recreation is the disposable component of your daily package, and you don't know what to do with it. Here, I would strongly recommend Stephen Covey's, hierarchy of needs and stuff like that. And I see that Stephen Covey is one gem of a man who is out of fashion nowadays, but still most of his things are highly motivating and correct. Basically, correct. That we will see.
I think hobbies, etc., come under this, and one day we should tackle that topic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next slide, please. Now, Karl Marx is the guy, the communist, and many people hate him But he was the one who brought back some semblance of balance in working living. And you will hate me for saying this. Because Karl Marx did something which the managements didn't do. The management of these various factories and this industrial revolution and all that, they didn't care a damn about how the individual lives. And in fact, many of the managements in those factories will force their labor and their own children and offspring and everybody to come to the factory so that the production can continue. That is nonsense. But we'll see about it a little later, or even separately maybe. Because there is a resurrection or resurgence of what Karl Marx did 2 centuries ago, and that should not go unnoticed. Next slide, please.
And maybe just an observation there is, I think you made a very valid point. Many of what seem like extreme thoughts, like some people consider communism extreme, come in response to imbalance and extremes on the other side, right? And that is what leads to, there is always that rebound that will happen if you don't stay in balance.
True, very true, very true.
Yes.
Now, here is the actual thing which started with Karl Marx and his contemporaries, who lived in a world of smoke, and smoke, pollution, etc., etc., etc. Now, there was chaos in this world, and somebody had to bring some semblance of normalcy within that, and that is how the Industrial Revolution started and proceeded, and side by side, the IR-HR angle also developed a lot. And Karl Marx deserves full marks. Even today, Karl Marx deserves full marks. Why not? We will see. So that is the Industrial Revolution for you. And that affected families and societies and communities and all beyond imagination. Next slide, please. Ironically, in this ultra-modern capitalistic society, there are some elements which try to bring the balance in perspective. Australia, for example, said to be an example of ultra-high capitalism. And even they realized that to sustain this, to sustain your work-life balance, you have to say no. Learn to say no. That is another topic which we can run a workshop on. And how to say no, and how to say no to the management or to the labor, or to say yes to one and the other. There are very complex interactions of factors here. Australia now has proposed, but nobody talks about it. You read Economic Times, they don't mention a word about it. Australia proposes right to disconnect. Now, in Canada, when these Blackberries came into focus, people said, unions said, managers said, everybody said, after 5:30 or 5 o'clock, you just switch off your BlackBerry. And this led to a human cry. And cutting off BlackBerry was the thing. And then if you are doing some work somewhere, even if you are doing something at home, if it is relating to your work, that should be taken as work. And you may be sitting at home and sipping champagne. So the Australia proposed right to disconnect. I'm repeating this. Nobody bothers about it today. They say, stay connected, and so what you have to stay connected, whether you're snoring away or eating away or God knows what you're doing. So Australia proposed it, and today the whole world, in a way, is honoring that. But we'll spend more time on that. How the modern societies actually look at the so-called rest and recreation component, because labor or work is fairly clear-cut. The others are not. So if you're working at midnight, doing something at the sleeping time, and you're not sleeping, you are utilizing the sleeping time and stealing your time, etc., etc. You'll see that in one of our workshops later on.
So maybe a comment. Maybe a comment, since you mentioned the multi-generational view. I guess all of us today are knowledge workers, as they say, or a very large number of us are, right? And like you said, when it's physical labor in a factory, you know where it ends. But let's say your work involves doing things where you have to use your mind. This connection is very often required to solve problems deeply or do creative work. And I think that is also what you mean. That this connection is not only from the individual's point of view. I guess even the workplace and the companies benefit from giving the individual the space to disconnect and recharge, or think differently about their work, right? Which we can cover in different terms.
Yeah, quite true, very true. See, for example, another simple example, you are working at the desk, computer desk, or your laptop, or your, whatever. They say every hour take a break of 5 minutes. Nobody follows it anyway. But if you really see the hygiene of computer use, take a break every hour for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
People laugh. But that's very important because it will save your back, your lumbar spine will be better. Yeah. You drink less liquor or some such thing,
Or coffee.
So, or coffee, yes, why not? Yes. Yeah. Next slide, please. No matter what you say or what you desire, what you want, today's youngsters willy-nilly are forced to work non-stop 24 by 24/7, 24 by 24, or 7, whatever.
Yeah.
Then there are some people who believe that today's work hour, 8 hours, 9 to 5, that kind of a thing, that doesn't work anyway. And you see bank employees, for example, at midnight, almost at midnight, working hard to balance their budgets and books.
Correct.
So this 40 hours a week doesn't exist in any sector.
Correct.
Just doesn't exist. And somebody said, you make a virtue out of necessity, so you make it from 40 to 70. And people said, and that's 72 hours. But then some union people said no. But many people said 70 hours, we are anyway doing work for 70 hours. Yeah. Why not consider it as work, etc. Right. Then the overtime concept came and went. Today there is no overtime. Nobody talks of overtime. Correct. But it is there. You are doing overtime. Right. But how to do it? How to do it intelligently? How to do it cleverly is the issue. Correct. So that is another workshop topic. Yeah. Next slide,
and I guess the thing is hours, and I think in response to this recent preoccupation with the 70 hours, productivity is different from the number of hours put in, right? And that again comes back to effectiveness and efficiency. Two topics that again we should talk about. There is physical and mental efficiency and effectiveness, which if you put more than a certain amount, the marginal utility of further work is low.
Right. Now, there are simple arithmetic equations and calculations to ensure productivity, and HR managers flaunt it around. But ultimately, at your own level, personal level, deep inside your own brain, your own body clock, correct, you know how many hours are really being put there. There is a Parkinson's law which says work expands to occupy the time allotted to it. It's another joke, but correct, it is there.
But it is reality.
Very much there. There is another aspect. Your topics after topics for Venkatesh to come and mull over. Okay, next slide. Here you see a blue-collar worker, really blue, the bluest of the blues, not the blue that Indian cricketers wear. The real blue-collar work with a helmet signifies the labor class. And this labor class is working with dangerous areas like sparks and hammers and whatever. And this fellow is smiling because somehow, somewhere, his biological needs are met. And he's able to continue to wear the blue dress and continue to work with sparks and or hammers and sickles and whatever. So this is fine, but then it's not fine when it crosses that Lakshman Rekha, that we'll see another Lakshman Rekha topic for workshop. So how is this to be done? How is this to be executed? About 2 years ago or even more longer, I was asked by the British Council in Mumbai to do a workshop on work-life balance. Right. Mind you, British Council, maybe they found my role as a little more British than Indian, and then they asked me to do the workshop. It went on for 2 days, and ultimately we came to the conclusion that work-life balance is entirely up to you. And we'll say, hey, what a big discovery you come out with it. I know it is only up to me. But then people say that the HR comes in, puts in the fingers in somewhere, and then it says, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, go here, don't go there. That kind of a thing. Ultimately, it's up to you. As you saw the elephant, somebody is forcing the elephant to stand on a ball without slipping and falling. You be the elephant and you manage it. any which way you want. Whether the British Council guy has sent an American to come and make you work or like this, or whether it is a Dehati who is doing this, it's entirely up to you. And then how do you proceed with that? If the onus is on you, then all the more the difficulty in advising anybody. You advise, you suggest, but then ultimately the guy does whatever he or his family wants. Or if there is a family, that is another topic. What do you mean by family?
We are coming to, I guess. We are coming to in a minute. Family.
Yeah. We'll finish now. Next slide,
I think
please.
the next page I think covers that, if I remember right, or maybe the next.
Yeah. Now, quickly, quality time is something that we have to identify.
Right.
And the quality time has to be derived by all members of the family, and then it becomes a reality. So quality time is something we have to look at it and in a little more sensible and productive way. Next slide, please. And of course, there is this perennial talk of 4-day week, 3-day week, 2-day week, or 0-day week, etc. But 4-day week is a reality now. And within those 4 days, how many hours you pack, it's up to you. And there you take the guidance and advice of your family members. I would say don't sit with your HR man all 4 days in the week. Bring your family in, and then there will be some semblance of balance. Next slide, please. So this is a quality time we saw. Next slide, please.
I think, yeah. So maybe just one observation before we go there across the last 3 slides. I think, I know that's what you mean to say because that's what you normally say. I think none of this is to suggest that, one can theoretically push back against either the company or the, realities of life. That's why I guess we are calling our channel Wellness in the Real World. I think
Right.
what you're effectively saying is that there are things that we as individuals, even in, fairly constrained situations can do to find
Right.
answers which are specific to our situation, right? And
Right.
one should not think one is helpless. Whether the company can do that or not, or whether your employer can do that or not, there is a lot that we can still do within our constraints, I think is the point you're making, Doc.
Yeah. Very true. You hit the nail on the head, Venkatesh. Actually, as we move into the 22nd, 23rd, and 25th century, the way we are looking at, say, data that we handle. Now, around the clock, we are managing data.
Right.
Now, whether you're a IT guy or not, next slide, please. Data comes in, keeps coming in, and then you have to manage it, and then you have to work it out in such a way that the output that you get out of it is sensible.
Correct.
So, the data revolution is artificial intelligence, which, of course, everybody talks about, whether you read Economic Times or whether you read the Filmfare. Now, artificial intelligence is to be integrated in data management, and the younger generation may find it easier to work with AI than oldies like me. At my age of 80, then I can, somehow get away with it, but you cannot. So this is going to also determine the way you are handling data. It's also going to determine how you are creating quality time, how you work with the outputs that you eventually get and so forth. So data revolution is important, and HR departments will have to look into this at an individual level more closely. So these are my thoughts, Venkatesh. Do you have any further advice?
No, I think this is makes perfect sense. Just one thing, since you mentioned data, it's interesting. Again, I go back to some of our conversations. There is
Right.
hard data, and then there is also
Right.
information overload, right?
Right.
And data is just one word for another form of information. And we are
Right.
bombarded with information so often and so much that just
Right.
managing that, not just at work, but in terms of input and stimulus, can be fatiguing, and disconnecting even from that is very crucial to being able to center oneself. Is a thought that came to me when you said data.
Very true. Very true. Now, this AI is an emerging thing, and that the brain teaser of AI, all of us will have to live with.
Yeah, one good thing about AI, of course, is that those who learn, sorry, I was just saying that maybe one of the ways, as one thinks of solutions, one can use AI or emerging technologies to improve one's productivity and improve one's work-life balance is also an aspect we can deal with at some point.
Wonderful, Venkatesh. Very positive and very powerful conclusion of an interesting day's interaction. Thank you for comparing, and thank you for dishing it out.
Yeah.
the way we can.
Thank you, Doc. And a week down the line, we'll come up with one more. This is just meant to be sharing your perspectives. I'm just a facilitator for you. Thank you so much, Doc. Take care.
Thank you.